Your worst enemy could be your best friend, and your best friend, your worst enemy. Hello friends, I'm Dr. Sergio, and I'd like to welcome you. Today, I have a new true crime story for you, so let's dive straight into it, without delay. It is said that one should always beware of snakes in the grass because the snake you are nurturing today might, given the chance, bite you without a second thought. We're talking about an Indian man who moved to Britain in search of a better life. He worked hard and earned a lot of money. Over time, his whole family settled in Britain. Everything was going well until one day his entire family of 5 suddenly disappeared without any notice. The disappearance was so perplexing that 1,000 police officers worked day and night for a year and a half, spending 100 crore rupees, yet they could not solve the case. The mysterious disappearance of this Indian family in London will shake anyone to their core. This cruel event occurred in 2003. For months, the investigation went on with no clue about whether they had fallen into the ground or been swallowed by the sky. Then, during the investigation, a shocking revelation came to light, making everyone's feet slip from under them. This entire story is about Amarjeet Chauhan and his family. They had moved from India to Britain a few years ago, worked hard, and started their own export-import company called CIBA Freight, located right next to Heathrow Airport. While living there, Amarjeet married a girl named Nancy, who was also from Punjab. After their marriage, Nancy lived in London with her husband, Amarjeet, and their 2 young children. Nancy's second son, Mahesh, was only 2 months old, so Nancy's mother, Charanjit Kaur, was staying with them to help out. Nancy had a brother named Onkar Verma, who lived in New Zealand. Though they were far apart, they often spoke on the phone. As usual, on February 14th, 2003, Nancy called her brother Onkar Verma. However, this time, Nancy sounded anxious. When Onkar asked about her distress, Nancy explained that Amarjeet had gone to the office the day before and hadn't returned since. According to Nancy, when Amarjeet was late returning from the office, she tried calling him several times, but his mobile was switched off. After a while, she called Amarjeet's company and learned that he had gone to the Netherlands for an urgent business meeting. For a major businessman, traveling to another country for a meeting wasn't unusual, but Nancy was alarmed because Amarjeet had never mentioned this new business deal or his trip to the Netherlands. Nancy was also troubled because she knew Amarjeet had recently applied for a residency permit, which meant his passport was with the British government. It was impossible for Amarjeet to travel to the Netherlands without his passport. Just as Nancy was trying to piece this together, she received a voicemail from Amarjeet, reassuring her not to worry and saying he had to go abroad for some urgent work, but would return soon. This message should have brought some comfort, but Nancy's anxiety increased because, for the first time, Amarjeet had left her a message in English. He had always spoken to her in Punjabi before. Then the entire family went missing. On February 13th, 2003, Amarjeet went to work for the last time but didn't come back. Nancy informed her brother, Onkar Verma, about the situation on February 14th, 2003. After learning the details, Onkar tried to reassure his sister and ended the call. The next day, February 15th, 2003, when Onkar called again to check if Amarjeet had returned, Nancy's phone was also switched off. Despite multiple attempts, he couldn't get through. Meanwhile, employees from Amarjeet's company, CIBA Freight, were also trying to reach Nancy without success. Frustrated, the company contacted the local police, reporting that Amarjeet had not been at work for 2 days and that they were unable to reach his wife, Nancy. When the police team went to Amarjeet's house, they found it empty. Amarjeet, his wife, their 2 children, and Nancy's mother were all missing. While the police were trying to figure out where everyone had gone, they received a shocking piece of information. After Amarjeet and his family went missing, A person came to Amarjeet's company with a letter signed by Amarjeet. The letter stated that Amarjeet had grown tired of England and was leaving the country permanently, handing over the company to a new owner. The letter came with all necessary documentation, including details of the new owner and Amarjeet's signature. The police verified the documents and found them to be authentic, leading them to believe that Amarjeet had indeed left England voluntarily. Consequently, the police investigation slackened. Over 6 weeks passed with no trace of the family. During this time, a local English newspaper published a story claiming Amarjeet Chauhan was facing severe financial problems and had secretly sold his company and left the country. Both the police and employees at Amarjeet's company, along with others, accepted that Amarjeet had left England of his own accord. However, Onkar Verma, Nancy's brother living in New Zealand, was not convinced by the police's claims or the story of Amarjeet leaving the country. When the police did not make significant progress, Onkar traveled from New Zealand to London on March 5th, 2003. In London, Onkar exerted continuous pressure on the police to find Amarjeet, but they showed little interest. Eventually, Onkar launched a campaign against the police, prompting them to resume the investigation. The investigation restarted, beginning at Amarjeet's house. When the police examined the house, it didn't appear that the family had left voluntarily. Clothes were still in the washing machine, and food was left on the table. The small children's clothes were scattered in the room. Furthermore, Nancy's mother, Charanjit Kaur, always carried the Guru Granth Sahib with her, but it was found left on the table for the first time. Seeing the Guru Granth Sahib on the table, Onkar told the police that his mother would leave everything, but she would never leave the Guru Granth Sahib behind. As the police continued their investigation, they learned that Amarjeet's relatives in London had received a letter from France. The letter, written by Amarjeet himself, stated that he had moved to India with his family because he was fed up with England. Although the letter was supposedly written by Amarjeet, the relatives found it hard to believe, as Amarjeet usually wrote letters by hand. However, this letter was typed on a computer. Over a month had passed since Amarjeet Chauhan and his family went missing, and the police had yet to reach any conclusion. The conditions inside the house during the search suggested that the family had not left voluntarily. After Onkar Verma raised suspicions about the abduction of Amarjeet Chauhan and his family, the local police handed the case over to the Scotland Yard Serious Crime Group on March the 21st, 2003. Scotland Yard took over the investigation, but despite weeks of probing, they found no leads. The Chauhan family had disappeared in February, and now it was April 2003. The company was being run by a new owner, while there was still no trace of the old owner, Amarjeet Chauhan, and his family. The police focused on determining if they had gone to India and safely arrived there. The English police contacted agencies in India but discovered that Amarjeet had neither returned to his village nor visited any relatives. While the police efforts seemed fruitless, a body was discovered on the nearby coastline in April. The investigation revealed that the body was Amarjeet Chauhan's, and Onkar Verma identified it as such. The case took a dramatic turn. Until then, the police had presumed Amarjeet was living peacefully elsewhere, but in reality, his life had been abruptly ended by someone unknown. Finding Amarjeet's body made it clear that the earlier theory of Amarjeet fleeing the country was completely false. The police sprang into action, assigning hundreds of officers to solve the case. The initial suspicion fell on Kenneth Reagan, who had presented a letter and ownership documents claiming Amarjeet had transferred the company to him. The police began to dig into Reagan's background. Although he now appeared completely innocent, Kenneth Reagan had been a notorious name in Britain's criminal world around the 1980s. He had been a major drug dealer and involved in various illegal activities like passport forgery and human trafficking. In 1998, London police had caught Reagan with 30 kilograms of heroin and arrested him for drug trafficking and forgery. Kenneth Regan had sold over 2,000 crore rupees worth of drugs in London. After his arrest, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but offered to become a government witness. In exchange for a reduced sentence, the police accepted his offer, and with his testimony, they exposed several major drug rackets and arrested numerous criminals. Regan's sentence was reduced to 8 years, and he assisted in various other cases, further reducing his sentence, and eventually Regan was released from prison in 2002 after serving only 3 years. After his release, Regan's financial situation was dire, and his criminal background made it difficult for him to find work. Amarjeet Chauhan then appeared as a savior for Regan. Amarjeet often hired people down on their luck at his company. After his release, Regan was desperate and jobless. He approached Amarjeet's company for a job, and Amarjeet, moved by his situation, hired him as a delivery boy. Following the discovery of Amarjeet's body, the police rearrested Kenneth Regan and began questioning him. During initial questioning, Regan claimed that Amarjeet had appointed him as the owner of the company before leaving Britain. He presented documents for this deal, but the police, aware of Regan's criminal past, did not trust him and began a rigorous interrogation. Despite the police's best efforts, Regan was a seasoned criminal and managed to withstand their questioning. The investigation seemed to be hitting a dead end again until April 9th, 2003, when an anonymous phone call changed everything. Though the police could not obtain any information about the anonymous caller, the call prompted a more intense interrogation of Regan, which caused him to break down. Regan revealed a shocking detail that left everyone stunned. Regan explained that after working as a delivery boy for a few months, he learned that Amarjeet planned to sell his company and move back to India with his family, as Nancy had expressed this desire multiple times. Regan then told Amarjeet he knew a wealthy person interested in buying the company at a good price. Since Amarjeet was eager to sell, he agreed to meet this buyer. On February 12th, 2003, Regan invited Amarjeet to his home for a meeting with the prospective buyer. However, upon Amarjeet's arrival, Regan, along with 2 accomplices, kidnapped him. They tortured Amarjeet and forced him to sign numerous blank papers and ownership transfer documents. They also coerced him into sending a voicemail to his wife Nancy. After obtaining the signatures and sending the voicemail, they brutally murdered him. Initially, Kenneth's plan was to kill Amarjeet, take the documents, and then become the owner of the company. However, he soon realized that with Amarjeet's wife and children still alive, his plan to take over the company might not succeed. Therefore, after killing Amarjeet, Kenneth went to Amarjeet's house on February 15th, 2003, with a friend and murdered Nancy, Amarjeet's 18-month-old son Devendra, 2-month-old son Ravindra, and Nancy's mother, Charanjit Kaur. He then buried all their bodies in a secret location on a 50-acre farm which belonged to Belinda Bravin. On the day the bodies were buried, Belinda was out of town, but she returned shortly after. Fearing that Belinda might accidentally discover the farm, Kenneth and his accomplices decided to move the bodies elsewhere. Following the plan, Kenneth and his 3 accomplices returned to the farm while Belinda was away, exhumed the bodies, and loaded them into a vehicle. They then took the bodies out to sea and dumped them. As Kenneth was carrying out this plan, Belinda came back and saw them digging on the farm. She discreetly observed the activity and later informed the police. The police arrested Kenneth and began collecting evidence. Although Kenneth was careful to leave no evidence, the police eventually found a drop of blood identified as Amarjeet Chauhan's in a corner of his house. Discovering the motive behind the murders proved challenging. The investigation revealed that despite Kenneth's release from prison, he wanted to restart drug smuggling and needed a company to facilitate this. When Kenneth learned that Amarjeet wanted to sell his company, he took a job as a delivery boy under false pretenses. He then set up a fake buyer to lure Amarjeet to his home, where he kidnapped and killed him after getting his signatures on forged documents to claim ownership of the company. To cover his tracks, Kenneth murdered the entire family. Having previously committed similar crimes and evaded capture, he was confident he would escape justice this time as well. In November 2004, charges were filed against all the accused, including murder and kidnapping. After a thorough trial, the court sentenced Kenneth and his accomplice William to life imprisonment for the murders, while Peter, found guilty of Amarjeet's murder, received a 23-year sentence. In April 2003, Amarjeet Chauhan's body was discovered, followed by Nancy's body in July when some fishermen accidentally caught it in their net. Nancy's mother, Charanjit Kaur's body, was found in November 2003 near the shoreline. While these three bodies were recovered, the bodies of the two young children have yet to be found,